let's try some problem solving with pi. Before we start with that, what is pi? So I like to understand pi as the circumference of a unit circle. A unit circle is a circle with diameter of 1. So think about it as a square has a height of 1 and a width of 1. And you have a circle inside filling up the entire square, meaning hitting each edge. It's a perfect circle. So you have a unit circle, they call that. A circle with the circumference with the diameter of 1. Okay? So what is the circumference? The circumference is the length of the outside, the edge of the circle. So if you're traveling and taking the length of this circle going this way, you would get the length of the outside of the circle. We call that circumference. And they find that a unit circle, a diameter of 1, the length of the outside of the circle is circumference of a unit circle equals pi. They also find that as the circle gets bigger, a diameter of 2, 3, and 4, it goes up by that multiplication, that multiple of pi. So if you have a unit circle of a unit circle, instead of a unit, it's now 5 the diameter, the circumference will become 5 times pi. And in general, the circumference of a circle equals pi times the diameter. As the circle gets bigger, it still remains a perfect circle, so it's pi times the diameter will give you the circumference. It's a unit, it's a measure. Circumference is a measure of this edge of the circle, and it turns out that when it's a diameter of 1, it's pi. It's this funny number, 3.1415, etc. And they gave that number the name pi to make it simple. So before we get to the questions, let's just focus on the fact that circumference is a measurement of distance, or you could call it length. A length of this edge. When it's 1, it's 3.1415, and as the diameter gets bigger, the length of that outside, that circumference, gets bigger by units of pi, multiples of pi. Okay. Let's get to some questions. With problem solving, understanding what a circumference is and what pi is. What is the circumference of a circle with diameter of 5? The circumference of a circle with diameter of 5, so it would be 5 times pi equals their circumference, C, the circumference. So we know what pi is, 3.14, and you could do the multiplication to get the circumference. Okay, again, in general, pi times d is the circumference. All right? If you want, you can put the answers in the comment section below. Second question would be reverse. What is the diameter of a circle whose circumference is 25? So in that case, you're just doing the reverse. They're giving you the circumference already at 25, and they're saying that equals some diameter times pi, and you have to solve for the diameter. Okay, now let's get to the area of a circle, which also has pi in its equation. The area of a circle is pi times r squared. First you do the r squared, then you multiply by pi, and you'll get the area of the circle. Now what is the area of a circle before we start problem solving? The area of a circle is the area within the circle. It's the space. So as we said last time that the circumference is a distance, area is a totally different measurement. It's a measurement of space. Okay, I put that here as well. Area is a measurement of space. There are two different measurements. Measurement of space, pi r squared. So same thing when you have a square, you can measure the height or the width of a square. That's just length. But if you want to know about the space inside, it's a different measurement entirely. So you could have height 1, width 1, and then the space within that box is also called 1, because that's a measurement of space. Okay. Now, knowing pi r squared now, we know that the space of a circle is related to the radius. The radius we talked about before. Radius is half of the diameter, or a line going from the center of a perfect circle to the edge. And that's called the radius. And that's related to the area of the circle, by squaring it and multiplying it by pi. So what is the area of a circle with radius of 3? So you just plug it in. Pi, which we know what that is, times 3 squared equals the area. And again, you can solve that and put that in the comment section. And what is, in the reverse, they could ask, what is the radius of a circle whose area is 5? So they're 25, so they're telling you what the area is. And then they want you to find out what this little r is. And you could do that by solving for r. Okay? And that's how you understand the circumference, which relates to pi and relates to the diameter and thereby relates to the radius as well. And you have here the area, which relates to pi and relates to radius, which could also relate to diameter. And we'll see in a second what the trick is. What is the trick that gets everybody confused? Well, that's where they relate these two processes, these two equations, and they ask you a question based on that relation, even though they really are two different measurements. So how do they do that? Well, they're related because each one of them has the distance in its equation. One has radius and one has diameter, and we know that the radius is half the diameter. So they could ask you, what is the area of a circle with a circumference of 10? So this part of the question is talking about circumference, and this part is talking about area. So you could just look at that as two different discussions. And the circumference of 10, well, we know what a circle with a circumference of 10 looks like. Well, that would be the circumference is 10. That equals pi times the diameter. And then we can figure out what the diameter is. Now we have to get from there to the area, so we just take that diameter, and then we divide it by 2. And then we get the radius, don't we? And once you have the radius, you could just do pi r squared equals the area, and then you have the area. Okay? And the reverse, they could do the same thing. They could say, what is the circumference of a circle whose area is 50? So again, you split it up and you say, well, I know what a circle area of 50 looks like. It's 50 equals pi r squared, isn't it? Well, if it is, we know what pi is, 3.14, and we know everything else. So we could solve for r, and then we could say, well, 2r is the diameter. And then once I have that diameter, I could do pi times the diameter, and that equals the circumference. And then I get my answer, circumference. Okay, let me know if you guys have any thoughts, any comments in the comments below. And you could also give me any suggestions for the next type of problems we should discuss.